I'm going to be brief. I have 10 slides, so roughly I've calculated the time that we'll be able to finish this well within time and then give some time for question and answers to everyone. So first and the foremost, this is the topic of today's discussion, the impact of AI and ML in health and wellness industry. So we as Clinisys were only in health initially, but we expanded into wellness, which is a little bit of an extension, I would say. But I'll give you that story as well as we move on. And we know that it has become significant and very prominent, the use of AI and ML in this industry, and it is increasing. Like any other industry, this is increasing by leaps and bounds. So in this presentation, I will share our company's journey, our successes, our failures, the impediments that we faced, and so forth. But basically focusing on business case. So what does that mean is that if I have to draw some business case out of healthcare in Canada is publicly funded, and business cases are very hard to come by that way. But if you see the use cases, there are tons of them, and we'll talk about that how our company actually started in medical records, went into AI and ML big time, almost 10 years back before the so-called fame and name of ChatGPT and so forth, the generative AI technologies, but we were utilizing thanks to professors at the U of A, including Russ, who was very kind of him to share some of his resources. Some of the PhD students who ended up working with us on very prestigious projects in across Canada. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll end with Q&A session. So what this topic or today's topic won't cover, so I won't be talking about specific technologies. I will stay on the business side of the realm. So you won't expect any smart and GBoost or any technologies that we may be using in our AI and ML applications. Also, we won't talk about any other industry, impact on any other industries, because it is a very wide topic, overall AI and ML, but we will just focus on health and wellness industry, the projects that we have been doing, and some of the successes and the failures that we have seen in this. So this is a brief history about Clinisys. We started in 2011. It was founded by a group of individuals from diverse backgrounds, technology, business, and medicine, of course. And we developed very quickly a product that we launched in 2012. So within a year of development, we launched a cloud-based electronic medical record system targeting only the physician offices. So we were not looking at hospitals. We were not looking at healthcare regions. We were specifically looking at physician offices and those physicians who deal with day-to-day. First, they are the first stop for anyone getting sick or flu or whatever. So that was our target audience. And as we know that most of the physician offices that you visit are run by individual physicians or a group of physicians, or they're also small businesses actually. So they're registered businesses in there. So that was our target and the revenue model at that point. Very soon, we started into health data analytics, thanks to a project that was brought forward by one of a collaborator from Toronto. And so this is in Newmarket, Ontario, to be specific. It was headed by Dr. Dave Williams. And Dr. Williams, everyone knows he is a two-time astronaut and Canadian Space Agency and NASA. So I had a 10-slide presentation just like this. And I was trying to show him what we can do with the hospital data. So we were getting into that side of the game by then. And he stopped me at slide number 3 and said, we are doing this project. So he sponsored that project. That started our journey into the analytics realm. And we never stopped after that. And we have supported multiple projects, R&D projects at U of A, University of Waterloo, University of Calgary, like the list goes on and on. But we have a lot of students come in, work with us. We have PhD candidates, of course. Russ was, as I mentioned earlier, was kind enough to lend some of the brilliant students from ComSci specifically, and so we worked. But I will, in my acknowledgements, later on, I will also point out to other departments of UFA that we are working with. And our clients include clinics, hospitals on the product side, and the wellness industry. So the wellness industry is interesting, and I'm going to stop here for a second. Um, it was interesting that the project came in from Canadian Sports Institute. We ended up collaborating with them, and Canadian Sports Institute is a body that does sports testing and work on athlete performances for Olympic athletes for Canada. And so they have a lot of data and they do quite a bit of testing. So they collaborated with us and we ended up doing some work with them. So that was the start with them. Of course, the likes of the Lululemon and Garmin and others that they deal with, they are their clients, and by default they become, if they need some of the services of analytics, they become our clients as well. So what are we witnessing? The type of work that we were seeing 10 years back, fast forward now, what type of projects that we are looking at, what type of products that we are developing. So, the Clinisys data science team worked on a variety of data projects over 10 years. So it's 10 years is a long journey. It's more than 10 years, 12 years, but specifically in data analytics and AI and ML, we have been working at least, I would say, 10 years. The projects address area of topics like the first topic that I mentioned in 2014 was hospital readmissions. Okay, so I talked about this almost 4 years back when I was here at ComSci to give a talk of a similar nature, but more on the technology side. So hospital readmissions are a big issue for larger hospitals or any hospital, if we would say. And the business case behind that is that 20% of the patients consume 80% of the budget. And these are the high-risk patients, what they call it. So those people who are coming into the emergency departments with a particular complaint, they are being admitted, and then they're being released after that. But if they have underlying conditions, and if they're released, they're back again in the hospital. That's a big drain to the hospital. Imagine a person going into the hospital and then again being readmitted for a different symptom that he or she brought in with. And so they wanted to do some analytics on it and find out using AI and ML if those patients, those high-risk patients, when they enter the emergency department, can be flagged so that they are not released just after being treated on one symptom. They may be treated for multiple symptoms, go a little bit deeper into the history, and deal with those before putting them out of the hospital gates. So that was the patient readmissions project, very successful. Fast forward now. So I've given 10 years back an example of a 10-year back what we were doing and now. So cross cancer is another example. There is an oncologist, Dr. Naresh Jha, who actually worked with us very closely on analyzing resource optimization. So how the resources are being allocated in the cancer care in general. So, how many nurses per patient, how many physicians per patient, and so on and so forth. It is a very draining exercise. If you see the data, it's very huge data that we looked at, or I think 5 years, if I'm remembering it right. And one of UFA's PhD candidate worked on it, Zara Shah, from who was under the supervision of Dr. Russ Grainer, who is here. We looked at that data. We used all kind of newest technologies and theories and methodologies that were there for AI and ML, and the result was stunning. That what we found in that data. So anyhow, that's up to the doctors to figure out if they want to publish that, but it was interesting data that we discovered using AI and ML, very huge business case. And then the athlete performance, as I mentioned, The athlete performance data is also very interesting because the companies like Lululemon and others, they are producing products very quickly. They are bringing products to the market very quickly using AI and ML, utilizing the technologies in AI and ML. And we were part of those kind of projects. One of the projects that I would like to mention with CSI, Canadian Sports Institute, was to determine the perception of an athlete when they are wearing a particular type of a shoe and they're running, and if they are feeling it is hard or soft. And these athletes they are measured at 1/100th of a second, because that's what the difference makes when they are running for their gold or silver or whatever. So they have a lot of data on that, and we help them analyze and fine tune that data so that whoever the end client was can produce a type of product that can eliminate or help them to achieve those nth degree of the second millisecond, in performance. And that's measured, that's tested. They have a very big lab in Calgary, and so they do a lot of product testing. So that's what the health, and that's why we moved into a little bit in the wellness side, and we are doing some projects with CSI. We are also witnessing a big push from other sectors. So, and I'll talk about more as we go further into the presentation about which other sectors in medicine are using or trying to push heavily into AI and ML, and what is the results. So some of the results we are already seeing. So let's talk about the challenges I mentioned. So we are witnessing the change in the type of the projects, as I said. So earlier the projects were very broad. Now they're becoming extremely specific. So as I said, that tenth of a second or 100 millisecond, whatever that measurement they want to, they are honing into very precise measurement of what they want to achieve. They know, they come with very precise result-oriented questions that, okay, we want to achieve from this data that we have, and they own the data as well. So it's up to the scientists to figure out how they can actually slice and dice the data. Some traditional challenges remain. So a lot of students come to me and they ask me at times that, okay, where do we get health data? Okay. Health data is very difficult to get. Privacy and security is always an issue, and that remains. So we have to deal with it. We have to learn how to deal with it. There are some open repositories of the data that are out there. Not necessarily that they may solve a problem if you have an idea. Okay, if you're looking for the data, it has to be anonymized. Sometimes this bigger project that I'm talking about goes through ethics approval and takes months to get the ethics approval on research data and so forth. So it's not easy. It's a very heavily regulated field. Whether it in Canada or in the US, it's the same. A little bit lesser in the US, as I understand, but they have their own standards. Okay, so we have our own PIPEDA and other standards that we have to meet, go through the ethics approval. Teams working here, we all know Solange is here. She's going to come on later on. We have dealt with the ethics approvals, right, left, and center. We have to deal with it. There's no if and but about it. If there is a patient data, has to be anonymized. So that challenge remains big time. Now, one thing is that access to computing power. Now, we had a local server, a CPU-based server, when we started 2014 in analytics. It was not good enough, right? And we started, getting tangled into this big processing issues. Okay, even the big powerhouses, like by then the cloud services from Google, AWS, Azure, all were there, but they would give you access to like limited amount of time, and you have to actually do your experiments. What changed in that is, with the support of Prairie Scan, UFA, we have an environment called Isaac. Okay, and that environment is quite powerful. extremely powerful. They have lots and lots of power, and Solange can talk. She is the manager for Isaac. She's here. She'll take some questions after this. But it's housed at UFA, one of the most powerful computing environment that I know of in Western Canada. We are still, I think, in Western Canada, we are at the top. So we have that environment, we can utilize it, the companies can utilize it, the local businesses can utilize it, and the professors and the academics can, and so are the students. So they're all welcome to use that in certain formats. Um, Allocation of budgets. So where does the money come from? Okay, now we are talking. So business case and money goes hand in hand, as we know. For smaller companies, it's a challenge. So if you ask someone that, okay, you need to allocate your 50% of the budget to AI and ML to improve your processes or XYZ, it's not going to cut it. Okay. It is from the companies, if they see the advantage in or competitive advantage that if I use this technology, it's going to improve my processes, then they're going to. So they have to make their own cases in small businesses. But in the bigger businesses, things are changing. Okay. That is significantly changing in bigger businesses. We see more and more um, requests for proposals coming out from bigger industries saying that whether it is oil and gas, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is healthcare, now there are budgets specifically assigned for AI and ML, and that is good. It may be some research budgets, it may be some product budget, it maybe some process improvement budgets, wherever they're going, but they're asking AI and ML to be utilized. One thing we all know now that there's a product called Copilot from Microsoft. So they've embedded that into all their office tools, and it's helping people. And so those technologies are coming. The bigger industries using it in a different way, but they're allocating a lot of resources, budget. They've even the roadmap, the product roadmaps are looking different than what they were looking 10 years back. So that is big thing that we are witnessing. So furthering the business case, so the possible reasons why these people are doing this, or why we should do it, or why we should all go towards AI and ML, means I'm not an advocate precisely only using AI and ML. It has its own, deficiencies as well. But some of them that we witness as a company is core business needs. As I mentioned, that they want to improve the processes. In healthcare, they want to improve the clinical outcomes. They want to automate some processes. So, for example, admission process in a hospital can be improved by using some data analytics and AI and ML to triage the data or triage the patients and so forth through the emergency departments. And so that is one example of an automation of a process. Advancement in computing power that we already talked about, and availability of resources. So this room has a lot of students. And so now we are producing students who are trained in AI and ML technologies. The ComSci curriculum actually includes, where there was one subject, now there may be multiple subjects being taught at various faculties, not only ComSci, the engineering as well. So we are working with engineering department here as well, and they also have application of AI and ML. And so also the arrival of super chip in the market. So super chips are, you know, the Blackwell chip that was introduced, I think, a couple of weeks back by NVIDIA, with a big furrow. But those chips, like imagine, what is the level of computing power? Means they say that today's smartphones are almost 1,000 times faster than the 80s supercomputer. Okay, so that those are the claims that are being made by smartphone manufacturers, but this is the truth. So the power has moved within our lifetime, or at least my lifetime. You guys are young, but within my lifetime, I've seen from my early days, 5 MB laptop to what we are using now. So even our machines are faster, smarter. Our phones are smarter and faster and high processing power, so forth. So all these things are impacting the change and the adoption of AI and ML overall. So one thing that, as I mentioned, and Dr. Ivan Fair is here as well. So when we initially wrote the application to bring Isaac, or what is now Isaac, the computing environment here, um, we had to make these cases. This is 5 years back, and within 5 years, we we are already upgrading the technology. Okay, and we are still, the vision is that we are still going to actually keep on increasing the power of computing so that the companies who are dealing with it, the academia which is dealing with it, can utilize this power and move the needle from in the product development, in the research, in the clinical outcomes, whatever they are doing, from point A to point B much faster. Okay, so that's what's happening on the GPU power, what we call. Um, Cloud data centers have also started offering sandboxes, which is, as I said earlier, it was very limited, but now if you go to NVIDIA site, there is a lab, sandbox lab, which is you can register and you can sign up for using some of the powers that they have, the computing power that they have. I don't know, I haven't used it, or our company hasn't used it, so I don't know how easy it is to be. I'm pretty sure that it would be very highly competitive game because it's global. It's open to global businesses. Also, increase in automation, scope of business systems and processes. So overall, the processes and the business systems have become such that, for example, when we started 12 years back, the electronic medical record data, which was then and which is now, the adoption rate has been quite high in 10 years. So the increase in the number of patient records, Canada-wide, US-wide, has grown exponentially. Okay, so that also actually gives an advantage to analyze such data if those projects come by. Okay, um, and so where do we see this going towards, or where this is ending, or is there an end to it, or is this just a blip, or what are we seeing right now? So in the 12-year history of our company, we haven't seen going down. It is only going up. Okay, so it's still a hockey stick. The demand is increasing, um, the adoption is increasing, and so forth. So which specific use cases that we have seen or witnessed or we have worked with? So I've highlighted few of them that we have been part of, but I'll talk about all of them very briefly. So first is the drug discovery. So the companies that are involved in discovering new drugs in the market. So COVID vaccine is one example. Okay, so that was developed by our company or multiple companies in US and Germany and so forth. They have to deal with a lot of data. They have to deal with a lot of chemistry data, molecules matching, toxicity data, whatever you may call it. But there is a lot of data that they utilize to come up with a solution, or a safe vaccine or a safe new drug of any kind. So we are seeing quite a bit of uptake. We have solicited some inquiries from some of these pharma companies, and we have just scratched the surface, but drug discovery is a big one. The other one is the wellness product development and product testing that I already mentioned about Calgary Sports Institute, and their clients like Lululemon and others. So they do it. We see that they are using AI and ML for their clients, who in turn are producing new products and bringing them to the market very swiftly. So the cycle of the product development really decreases in terms of the time, and they are able to bring the technologies or the products much faster than before. Automation in apps, as I mentioned about Copilot, there are tons of them. There is a local company in Edmonton that created an app called Scribeberry. Okay, it's created by a physician. And so basically it's a generative AI, as I understand. And we have integrated their technology for testing on our medical records as well. But that's a prime example. And there are multiple competition to them as well, but these are newer generation technologies that are coming up very fast into the market. Even the inception to release time is much shorter than what we faced 10 years back. Um, the other part is population data analytics. And so I've given some examples of that, the patient readmissions, the socioeconomic issues that people face and so forth, all are analyzed. You can track those things that, poorer neighborhoods have high risk of XYZ disease and so forth. So there's a lot of analytics things happening there. Finding out trends and patterns, who is getting sick very quickly, which is the most prescribed drug, whether it's working or not, all those things. We have seen that. We have worked on those kind of projects over the past 10 years. Sensor data, this is something new, okay, that we have been doing. But in the last 5 years, we have worked with the department here with computer engineering. Dr. Ivan Fair is here. So some of the profs there are working with us, Dr. Manisha Gupta, Dr. Edmund Lau, to name a few. We are all working on Dr. Mrinal Mandal. So we are all working on various projects that we support on the data coming out of sensors, and we are analyzing the data. These sensors produce tons of data, and so as we all know that the driverless cars or whatever the technologies of the future are, they're all sensor based. They're all watching something and making a decision through the camera or the sensors. So that's what's happening in the medicine as well. And we are seeing the testing devices, the pathfinding for wheelchairs, and everything is coming out of those sensor data, and that's very important as well. Medical robotics automation, and that is all the robotics that perform various surgeries and so forth. That is a little bit of a different segment altogether, but some of the automation. So for example, if the surgeon is watching um, the patients being operated through, a screen, I would say, he may or she may miss out something. Um, Use of AI and ML can provide some assistance that, have you seen this and this and this while you are operating upon this particular tumor or whatever they're doing. So that is happening. Not much. We haven't done any work on that. It is more on the biomedical engineering side, but that we are seeing slowly that is rising, depending on how the robotics itself are progressing, because it's a very complicated field. Um, Image automation, that we have done. And Dr. Russ Gaynor's students also have done some image recognition on CT scans, X-rays, ultrasound, everything. You name it. And today we have enough learning models that can look into that and say, well, this is the anomaly, this is not right, this is wrong, or whatever. So whatever the technicians were doing earlier, before the radiologists look at the image, now the assisted AI technologies can provide that hand to the technicians or even the radiologists to determine whether there is some anomaly in the image, in the scan. So this is what we are seeing as upcoming, where it is going. We'll see more and more projects in this, and this is only a very brief, limited memory list from my side or our roadmaps that, as a small company, that we develop. But we, even without moving, we are watching this coming, at least from the academic side right now. Most of the projects are coming out of universities, by the way. So lessons learned, what did we learn from this? And I'm hitting, I think, 30 minutes, so this will be my last slide, but then I'll open it for questions. So we learn from our mistakes, and we make a lot of mistakes. Okay. Over the 10 years, us our researchers, our students, we had to try and try and try again sometimes to get things right. At times, it is the resilience of the people who are working as a team. So it's not me, I'm just heading a small company, but it's my team or it's the collaborators like yourself that we work with. Okay. But I have to be, as a leader, provide that path that failure is okay. If you fail, it's not, even if the we have seen entire projects fail. Okay. The entire project sometimes just goes into an abyss, and that happens. But that's how we learn. And if we don't learn, we will not make it a success. So that's what we have done. And the two examples I'm going to give is the Canadian Sports Institute. That's a very specific, as I said, very specific data set that we were looking at. It's like finding a pin in the haystack. Uh, and we had lots of failures. We had repeats. We had multiple repeats on analyzing the data, and finally we um, got the success. Cross cancer, same thing. Very massive amount of data. 5 years of data of thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients, I would say. And it's not easy. The parameters, the subject matter experts that sometimes we do something and the subject matter expert says, oh, this is not what we are looking for, we are looking for something else. And no matter how much we do refinement of requirements and we go through the workshops and discoveries and all that, and still happens, still failures happen. So we have to learn from that, and that's what I have seen in my shorter life and the shorter life of Clinisys, that we have learned a lot. We have made some mistakes. We definitely are not that huge a company. We are a small company, but we have very big heart of supporting the researchers and the students and the employees that we have. So with that, I'm going to end with some acknowledgements here. So Gail Pauli and Bobby Joe, she's away sick, but she coordinated that, and of course Tenpei, who assisted me in setting up this whole thing and make this a success. Dr. Naresh Jha from the Cross Cancer, he was kind enough to let us use his project as a sample or example. Dr. Lawrence Risha from NACTRAC, which is the Northern Alberta Clinical Trial and University of Alberta. Dr. Eleni Strolia from the ComSci, Russ Gaynor was already here. And Dr. Lily Liu, we did a massive project with her a couple of years during COVID, actually. She's now with University of Waterloo. She used to be with U of A, and Dr. Christine Dome with her. Dr. Edmund Lau, Dr. Lindsay Westover, Dr. Mandal, and Pro Sturgeon from CSI, Calgary Sports Institute, to name a few. And with that, I will wind up my presentation and open the floor for the questions. Thank you. Russ.
Fascinating talk, as always. Thank you very much for enlightening us with your experience. I liked some of the examples you gave, things like the 30-day readmission time. So one question that typically is raised is, who will come back? But a more interesting question is, can we prevent that? Can we do better than that? And I like where you pose that. Are most of the projects at the level of actually deciding on actions to take rather than just here's a classification? Mm-hmm. And if so, how do you prove it was the best action?
So what we have seen in this hospital that we worked with, and the idea was amazingly great and so forth, but the actions sometimes fall through the crevasses. They fall through the cracks. At least in this particular project, that if I can think of, I don't know what were the actions they took after, but it reinforced their learning. That was for sure. They knew this. They were having the doubts that, okay, this is what the issue is, but now they were using a technology which was the cutting edge technology to prove that this is, so then they can make a policy decision or go to the government or get the funding to take the action. That's what I understand. But you have a point that at least they will have enough data with, if there more and more projects like this happen, that it can impact the policy. The government will say, well, this is good enough, and we are going to put 4 action plans in place to address the socio-economic issues or XYZ. But very good question. It right now it seems or it feels like that it is falling right there, and it's not going beyond that. Thank you. Yes.
Could you, with more detail, characterize the types of failures that Clinisys has experienced and maybe some of the steps that you could take to mitigate them?
Yes, so that would fall into more technical side, as you mentioned. So one of the, without naming the project, we were using certain algorithms. So we were using, let's say, SMART, um, and this is for those to make it easy. It's a particular technology, methodology, and technology in AI and ML to clean the data to arrive to a certain point. And Russ, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was not um, generating the model that we wanted or the researcher wanted. So they switched the model. So instead of developing 2 models, and there's always 2 models that are developed in parallel that we have witnessed so far, that one model is not good enough. 2 models is where you can actually figure out that, okay, this is working. In this particular one, we ended up developing 4 models with all different variations. So, they were using GBoost, and they were using classification and synthetic data and so on and so forth. And they were trying to actually come to the point, the baseline requirement of the researcher. And this was a particular project for finding rare diseases in children. I think I had that point, but I missed that point in the presentation. But we ended up developing 4 different models to come to that conclusion. And it was a success. It was a major success, that project. The failure would be that to reach that success, I think our 3 iterations failed. Okay. So using one technology, then the other one, and then combining them together and seeing the results. And so it just lengthens the project sometimes. So I hope that gives some answer to that. Yes.
Yeah, could you tell us which of those use cases were actually implemented in practice in integrated divisions workflow? Maybe all of them are, but yeah, some specific.
Yeah, so some of them are learnings, right? So they are research projects, and they end as a research project, but they take the data and move into the action plans, as Russ mentioned, that it can become an application. For example, the patient readmissions. Okay, so the result of the patient readmission was that a simple interface was developed at the emergency department, where they would plug in X name of a patient. It will go and apply those algorithms only if it's a high risk patient, and it will give a score from 1 to 10 and say, well, if it is more than 5, then better not discharge this patient when he or she is through the earlier diagnosis. Okay, so that is one example that comes to mind. But there are more examples on the wellness side. There are umpteen amount of things that are coming out of the wellness portfolio of ours that are being implemented. Um, the ratio of implementation of solutions are still low because the technologies are maturing as we go. But we will see the uptake. We are seeing more and more, like the Scribeberry, the local company, that is already on. They have been integrated into multiple systems across Canada. Okay, it's a local company in Edmonton. It basically voice to text translation. So it just creates a notes once you talk to. Well, the technology existed 10 years back, like Dragon Naturally Speaking, but it was not using AI ML. It was using some algorithms, but it was not fully what the power is now. That even smaller company, if someone asked us to develop that technology 10 years back, we would not have developed it. But now you can see that this technology is being developed locally and implemented as well locally and across Canada very quickly. Okay, so that we are seeing that there is a shift and the move of some new technologies coming very fast due to AI and ML. Our project still remains 50-50. So we see portions of our research translate into production, product line, process improvement, or whatsoever. Um, IP still remains an issue, because when these things are developed, it's a whole lot of topic to to discuss. It's a topic by itself. But who owns these technologies, um, specific algorithms, and so forth, at times becomes quite cumbersome when it's a research project. But if it's a very product-based development from a company, it's commercial, then it's easier.
Yeah, maybe it's a weird question, but would another direction be to look at the medical practitioners themselves and see whether they're using an appropriate amount of resources? Maybe you could flag them like additional training.
So there are lots of resources now coming up for every practice. How can you use X, Y, Z tools? Our understanding of working with frontline physicians, I'm not talking about the hospital physicians are different. The emergency department physicians are a different group. But let's say that if you are talking about family physicians, they have very short time. So when the patient enters and when patient goes out, the typical use case, they would write a prescription, they would, refer to for a lab or refer to a specialist and so forth. So it becomes very difficult for them to actually adopt to a new technology. But we have physicians coming to us now. We are seeing that, do you have this technology? Because they might have heard someone somewhere else. So it is still catching up. you know but yeah, you have a point too. In your question was an answer too, that we can have training for them, specific training for this physician groups and so forth, that look, these are tools out there, you can use it, you can make your practice better, you can concentrate more on your patients, use less time on creating notes and so forth. But yeah, that remains a business challenge, I would say. Good point. Yes.
I have two questions. One is a business question, another tech question. So for the business question, is all your clients is kind of a separate project, and they just giving their problem and using the AI ML to address these challenges, address the problem. Is that correct?
No, it's not totally open door. We have processes. So Dr. Raz Grainer also has a process in place where we screen the problems, because we are very finite, whether it is the Department of Computing Science at UFA or Department of Computer Engineering or us as a company, we have very limited bandwidth. So we do screen in our own ways the problems. Sometimes also we do investigate further whether it is even possible to solve the problem if the data is missing or X amount of data sources are missing and so forth. We have to come up with our own matrix to figure out how many projects we are going to take on per year, and so that's limited.
Yeah, and the second question is because you mentioned you have some success or failure in the previous local project, and how these experience or things can help you to the next project make it more successful and the higher probability of being successful.
Yeah. So the answer is very simple, but I'm going to give two parts to it. So one is that increase funding. So we would have to lobby the government to increase funding to get more of these projects off the ground. Healthcare is still government funded, so we are unfortunately reliant heavily on research fundings for these projects wherever they are emerging from, with the hospitals. Or remember that even the hospitals don't have enough budgets to allocate. They just dealing with the load of patients that they're dealing with. So they have to have that extra cushion to have. And I had a a chance to talk to Gordon here from, we ended up working or with his company, his ex-company. He was vice president with Syncrude. We have seen, and we were just talking the hallway before coming in, we have seen peaks and valleys, right? We have seen a lot of good money in this province, and we have seen the valleys. So I'm only going to talk about Alberta at this point. But we need to allocate more money towards research when there are good times, and reserve that for our researchers, our students, even for some of the company projects, because even the students who get hired needs to be paid. The students are the poorest employees of the companies. So unfortunate that is as much. So we need to improve that lifestyles. We have to improve the money that is coming into the student pockets, if they are doing any research for it. But this is meaningful research. You are saving lives. If you see from our angle, if we have to market our company today, because you didn't see a single marketing slide except for about us. But if I have to market, I say, okay, we need money. That's the first thing we have to ask. Right? So I think that it is very essential that we ask for that. We all should ask, and whether it is students, academics, companies, we all should ask that there should be more money allocated to XYZ, i.e. the healthcare, research in health. And that includes AI and ML technologies, because now earlier it was, if you saw few years back, 20 years back, the research money in medicine was for biological research or clinical research. Now, see what the shift is, okay? So we can make the difference from the technology side. Yes, Nassim.
So when you create a model, is it robust enough to use across multiple platforms? Like, for example, when you do your research optimization or patient readmission, then you create a model on one particular hospital. Can you use it on other hospitals, or have you looked at how you can use the same model and add additional features so that you can use it in other even provinces, not just one?
Sure. No, good question. Very good question. Most of the models are robust because the healthcare data is quite standardized across Canada, but it still needs fine tuning. So hospital A to hospital B, even in Alberta, it is a little bit different structure because we are centralized. We have centralized medical records. But if you move to Ontario, each hospital has their own system. So you may have to fine tune by the vendor or sometimes the data that is coming out. But overall, I would say that patient admission, the type of parameters they are tracking are very similar, so it can be reapplied to many forms. It also ties to the business case as well, that if it is not robust enough, then that money is not well spent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Russ. So
Final question. A lot of students here. You guys hiring?
we definitely are, and we post our positions on our website, of course, but it depends on the project. So if we have the project, we are hiring, and it is very quick, because, and sometimes we fall short, and sometimes we have no jobs because the projects are would vanish or whatever happens with the project. But the research projects specifically for students that we are hiring are typically through, we would know through you or ComSci or computer engineering which project is coming up. And generally, the profs would also know. So they also would spread the word. We didn't have to go, by the way, anywhere. Most of the time, the context within the faculty would provide us with one or two people that we go to. But probably a good idea that, we can, not for Clinisys alone, we can create a job board or something that is very specific to an AI and ML, and all the companies like Clinisys can post our positions there.
You guys had that board, right?
Well, the Technology Alberta has a job board, right? But,
Okay,
I think you can filter it
Okay.
for AI and ML positions.
jobs, yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
jobs.
they're not AI jobs these days.
Yeah, that's a
Really?
good
I didn't-
question.
I didn't-
That is actually a good question.
So we just hired that's a good point. Technology Alberta is a good example. Gail Powley, who introduced me, she runs an organization called Technology Alberta, and they are very active, extremely active, and they post the jobs. As I understand, they also support first job program, which basically allows companies to, get some funding from the government as well through them. So it's the last two projects that we did came through Technology Alberta actually. So good point. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any
Yeah, I don't know, any other questions? I mean.
for Isaac? So for the computing in environment, if you have any questions, Solange is here.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mehadi. Excellent. Yeah, so thank you very much for your presentation. It's really wonderful to see all those different interaction between those different organizations in our province and beyond, right? You spoke about Ontario as well, and also with Microsoft in the US. So yeah, to have that activity in our province is really, really important to know. We are not small players in this province. There is a lot of different really interesting projects going on. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you again for your time, and it was a pleasure.